Number one news source for everything in regards to the Boeing Company. My name is Will. Welcome back for another episode. Welcome to everyone joining on the live stream. Hello, Alan. How you doing, mate? So I thought I've not done a video for quite a long while. There's not really been too much going on. The odd little bits and bobs of information, but not really enough to make a full-on video. And on top of that, I've just been mad busy at work, so I've not really prepared anything. I've just kind of looked at something and thought, you know what, let's have a talk about this. So let's start with something that I was looking at on the old Twitter. So I follow this company called Robbins Co., which is a company that specialises in constructing tunnels. They operate as a contractor, and they've just recently completed a project in Nepal, and they did that for a phenomenal price, and they did it incredibly quickly. They actually finished 1 year ahead of schedule. Absolutely amazing. You've got to give credit to the team, to the engineers, to everyone who helped plan, build and operate that tunnel and that TBM. But there's some real sort of clear lessons from this particular example that the Boeing Company can take on board, possibly learn upon and improve. But the benchmark in terms of building tunnels quickly is currently with Robbins Co. So I started this thread. I've just read this brilliant article and it got me thinking, can Elon Musk and the Boeing Company beat the current speed kings of the tunnelling industry? Robbins Co. posted the article. Robbins Co. achieved an average of over 700 meters per month, which is absolutely incredible, guys. Any other big infrastructure project you can think of in any major city, they won't even come close to half of that. That is incredible. So that's an 8.4 kilometer per year, or 5.2 miles per year. This is an incredible rate of progress for a 5 meter diameter tunnel boring machine. In comparison, the Boeing Company in Hawthorne built a 1.14 mile tunnel in just over a year, thus around 150 meters per month, probably slightly less than that because it was over a year. Walker, how's Walker? How are you doing, mate? Hello, Chris Hinshaw. Hello, mate. The Boeing Company is funded personally by Elon Musk. That's correct, sir. Sir, that is correct. That was a question via Alan, who was funding the Boeing Company. As far as I'm aware, 99% of the money is coming from Elon Musk. I don't think the Boeing, the Tesla or SpaceX are funding the company. I think it's a personal expenditure from Elon Musk, which is good. And hopefully that company will stay as a private entity. I would hate to see it go public. I'd hate to see it go through what Tesla has gone through. Hello, Oliver. Hello, Galanda. How you doing? Right. So anyway, I went through this article and I read it and I thought, you know what? Robbins Co. deserve a bit of credit for what they've done. This is the benchmark for what the Boeing Company needs to look at and break that particular target. There were some months, if you do read the article, they achieved 1,000 meters per month when the actual geology was good. So again, phenomenal. 1,000 per month. Imagine that if you could achieve that over the course of a year. And imagine using multiple TBMs as well and daisy chaining them. You could really knock out a big tunnel in under a year. Big tunnel. So they achieved 5.2. So 1,000 meters per month. It's around, I don't know, let's say around 6.5, 7 miles per year. That means with 3 TBMs, you potentially could, easily do 21 miles in a year. That's bloody amazing. Anyway, this video has recently come out from Now You Know. I thought we could just go through this.
Welcome to this episode on our boring tunnel.
I'll just numb that down because it's not going to come through that well on the microphone. What is he actually talking about on this video? He's talking about the fundamentals of the Boeing Company. What is going to sort of give the Boeing Company a competitive advantage, a unique selling point over all the other contractors in this industry, allow them to build tunnels faster, allow them to operate personalised mass transit systems that are going to be profitable, that are going to take cars off the road, that are going to eliminate soul-destroying congestion. And sort of the main points of what he was talking about in this video: faster, cleaner, cheaper and safer mode of transport compared to everything else, like buses, airplanes. That is what we're aiming to do: faster, cleaner, cheaper. And then he was talking about, this is Zach, converging technologies. We've been building tunnels per mile. So we've got number one fundamental converging technologies: batteries. Then obviously cheaper tunnels. If you can dig a tunnel for $6 or $7 or $8 million per mile, that is, compounding reduction on what's already possible. And the main one, autonomous pods. Without that, this whole system wouldn't work. We need autonomous pods that go into the system, take themselves out. They use the public roads for the last mile or so, and then they drop you off at your final exit point. So it's a personalised mass transit. Another thing that Zach was talking about, which I think is critical, is the full electrification of tunnels. Now, obviously, TBMs have always been electrically powered. Maybe they're not 100% it comes from fossil fuels converted to electricity, and then it powers the TBM. But they're always electrically powered. What has changed is the muck trains. The muck trains have generally, 95% of the time, been powered either via diesel hybrid, or some other form of, maybe even by gravity in some cases. But with the electrification of muck trains can not only be quicker, they can move more, and they also can reduce the expenditure on ventilation systems. You imagine that big ventilation duct when Elon Musk was revealing the tunnels. We're talking 16 inches in diameter. That is, over the course of a 14-mile tunnel, that is an incredible expenditure in terms of installing that steel ductwork. Another thing Zach was talking about, continuous boring. You're doing the construction and the spoil removal simultaneously. Now, the Boring Company hasn't actually achieved these things yet. However, that is what they're aiming to do. If they can achieve those things, and I believe they can, I think it's just a technical issue. I don't think it's an impossibility. They'll be able to keep the machine active for the vast majority of every hour. At the moment, the tunnel boring machine is stationary for around 55 minutes of every hour, and the other 5 minutes of that hour is when they're doing the boring. Now, even if they could get it 50-50, where it's stationary 30 minutes and it's boring 30 minutes, that's, a 5-6x improvement on what they were previously doing. Another key point we're talking about is layers and layers and layers of tunnels. If you can put 6 layers of tunnels underneath a highway, and you've got a northbound and a southbound lane, that's 6 times 2, that's 12. That is 12 tunnels full of traffic. Each vehicle has, 12, 14 people in it. That is moving a lot of people in a confined space. That is going to massively reduce congestion in that particular area. And obviously, it massively increases the capacity of the system as well. Again, talking about autonomous pods, it's not going to be possible to do what they're doing at the moment without autonomous pods. We can't have drivers. One of the main expenditures for bus franchises, certainly here in the UK, is drivers, represented by some quite powerful unions. They all can only work 9 to 10 hours a day. They have to have a break every 4 hours. It doesn't really work. Drivers also fall asleep, they make mistakes, they don't turn up to work. We need autonomous drivers to get the cost down to make this system 100% safe. Another major thing that he was talking about was, why are people going to use the Boring Company system over their own car? Well, what would you rather have? Would you rather have an 8-minute commute to work or a 58-minute commute to work? 80 to 90% of people, when, time is important to them and they'd rather spend, $4 or $5, they're going to take the pod to work because it's a lot quicker. They can get up, they can have the breakfast, and then they can just get in the pod. They don't need to sit in traffic. They don't need to get up 2 hours early. I mean, for me personally, I sometimes get into work an hour and 20 minutes before I'm due to start because I just don't want to sit in traffic. I don't want to waste time. I don't want to waste petrol. And again, this is taking money off the gasoline and diesel industries. So if less people are buying gasoline and diesel, which is a $1 trillion market, huge market, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds are spent every day just refilling vehicles, then obviously that's where the money's going to come from, because people are happy to pay for car insurance, they're happy to pay for, gasoline. A litre of petrol in the UK, just 1 litre of petrol costs about $1.65. So, it's a lot of money. There were a couple of things in there that I felt were a little bit misleading. The number one thing that I particularly found misleading is he almost talked as if the Boeing company had already solved these problems. Well, technically they've not solved those problems yet. They're working on them. I mean, the Hawthorne test tunnel was a huge success. No doubt about that, very impressive. However, they were using an existing machine, so, everyone's got access to those machines. Right. I've been talking for quite a while there. One of the things that he talked about, which I found quite misleading, was he was saying your typical infrastructure tunnel costs anywhere from $450 million to $1 billion per mile. And I think that's very misleading, because when we say per mile, we're talking about building a tunnel for 1 mile. We're not talking about building a tunnel for 1 mile and then building part of an underground station. So when you look at projects like the 2nd Avenue subway in New York and the Big Dig under Boston, we're talking more in the 100 to 200 million dollars per mile kind of bracket there, maybe slightly above that. He also said that the dirt and the spoil will be used to make the tunnel walls or the concrete segments. Now, that is a good idea. There have been projects in the past that have done that. There was one in, where was it? Switzerland? I think there was one in Switzerland where they were going underneath the Alps, and they were going through an area where there was high amounts of granite and quartz, and they used that to as aggregate in a mix that was used to make the precast concrete segments. Now, that is a good idea. However, I don't remember the Boeing company or Elon Musk ever saying that, so I think that's a bit of an assumption. Hopefully they do that, but also he put a few ideas in there. He said next week he was going to talk about freight. Now, I've noticed on the Boeing company website there is a mention of freight. I think using these tunnels to move freight is an incredible idea. I think especially at night time between sort of 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. in the morning, if you could use that for freight, maybe you could deliver fresh produce to the shops and have it unloaded outside the shops ready to go in the morning. He's also talking next week about long distance tunnels. Now, at some point I'm going to do a few case study projects on this, a few possible projects that could be done. One of them I'm thinking at the moment is possibly linking northern New Zealand and southern New Zealand. Obviously, there are 2 islands. I think that potentially could be financially viable. One of the craziest things that I think that Zach said on his video was he thinks that the Boeing company might be worth more than Tesla in a short period of time. I'm unsure about that, because I think just Tesla is an absolute humongous, massive machine of a company that is going to, absorb so many different industries in terms of like grid storage, electric cars, electric trucks, roofing. Who knows where they go next? Pickup trucks. There's so many industries that they're disrupting. Potentially Tesla could become, $1 trillion company in the next 20 to 30 years. Who knows? Maybe the Boring Company could become a $200 billion, $300 billion company. I'm not sure. Maybe Zach's right. But personally, I think Tesla will always be the bigger company. Right. Let's have a look at the questions before I go on to the next part. The Boring Company is also listed as a subsidiary of SpaceX on several government documents. I don't think legally it is, Glander. Maybe they did list it as that, but I don't think legally it is a subsidiary of that company. I don't think it is. The people that own SpaceX, or that have a share in SpaceX, don't also have a share in the Boring Company. I mean, I could be wrong. Why is it stationary for such a long time out of the hour? Julie, excellent question. So, when the TBM is moving forward, it's removing that spoil from the cutter head. It's then got to get that spoil out of the tunnel. What happens a lot of the time is the trains that move the spoil out of the tunnel, they are full up. And also they're trying to get concrete segments into the tunnel to be assembled in that ring beam. So if they've not got enough concrete, precast concrete segments, they have to stop and wait for that train to come back. Also, the same goes if they fill up that train with spoil and they're still digging, they're going to have to stop for a minute. They're going to have to send the spoil train out, send a new train in. They're only on one single track. So, you know, that could be a 15-minute journey. There's also periods of maintenance. There may be periods where the machine is stalling, it's really struggling. They may have to take out some of the cutter discs and cutter blades and replace them. There's lots of different things that kind of go against the machine. I mean, some of those things will still affect the Boring Company's machines, limestone and proof rock. But the most important thing for the Boring Company machine is that there'll be two tracks or two railway tracks, narrow gauge, going into the tunnel. So you'll have spoil coming in and trains actually waiting to go in to collect more spoil. You'll also have other trains carrying precast concrete segments. So you'll always have, you know, plenty of precast concrete segments and plenty of trains to remove spoil to and from the cutter face. But you're obviously still going to have to do maintenance. You're still going to have to replace cutter discs and cutter blades. I hope that answered your question, Julie. Let's have a look. Johnny B. How about some underground parking so drivers don't need to go to the surface to search for parking there? Potential additional source of income also. Yeah, I mean, there's potentially options for doing underground parking, large excavations. That would, you know, it may offer a new revenue source for the Boring Company. I mean, being honest with you, Johnny, I quite like multi-story parking facilities. Maybe they could have an elevator going from underground in the tunnel to an elevated structure. Most of the elevated parking garages or facilities in the UK, it's all prefabricated, so all the steel comes in. You drop the steels in, then you have the precast concrete planks. The ramps are precast as well. They come in about 5 or 6 different sections. And, you know, you can assemble a precast concrete parking garage, like an 8-story one, in less than sort of 20 weeks, really quick. So I'm wondering if that might be more cost effective than going underground. Yeah, good point. Processes are not simultaneous currently, so stopping the TBM is part of the process. And the companies that run these TBMs, they don't really care about if it's stopped because they're still getting paid. If you're getting paid because, you know, the contractor's hiring that machine, you're quite happy to stop, really. And then your union workers, they're also quite happy to stop because they're on, you know, $30 an hour. So that's probably why they've not really changed anything. Yeah, no problem. Any questions whatsoever? This is an educational channel. Whatever you want to ask, you know, ask away. I'm quite happy to ask any questions about TBMs, boring, concrete construct, anything that relates to the Boring Company. I'm very happy to answer questions. No problem whatsoever. when does the actual digging start in Las Vegas? There's no official start date. That's the honest answer. In the previous episode I did on YouTube, that I had a schedule. At the moment, they're kind of in the planning and design phase, and getting the permits to work. Possibly could start early September, maybe October, possibly, but we'll have to see. Right, so let's have a look. So this is this article that I was talking about on Twitter. It's from this company here, Robbins Co. Really innovative company, got some excellent expertise in the tunnelling sector. I mean, this is phenomenal. This project was finished 1 year early, and they achieved 1,000 metres on various months, 3,300 foot per month. That is incredible. The team deserves incredible praise for their dedication to this project. It has been fantastic. And they do quite a lot of other projects, Robbins. So definitely a formidable force in this industry. So I was talking about Zach from Now You Know being only a tiny bit disingenuous when he's saying that tunnelling projects usually cost $450 million per mile to $1 billion per mile. I think it's about half of that. One of the examples that a lot of people like to use, including myself, is this one, is the 2nd Avenue tunnel. And God Almighty, was this a disaster from a cost perspective. It went over budget several times. It was just, and it took forever. And this is the funniest bit. Yeah, so they obviously thought, oh, the project's getting a bit over budget. Maybe we should have an accountant look at this to, determine how we can improve things next time round. So this accountant went in. He discovered the discrepancy while reviewing the budget for new train platforms under Grand Central Terminal in Manhattan. The budget showed 900 workers were being paid to dig caverns for the platforms. So they're manually digging it using machines. As part of the 3.5 mile tunnel connection, the historic station to the Long Island Railroad, but the accountant could only identify about 700 jobs that needed to be done, according to the 3 project surveyors. Officials could not find any reason for the other 200 people to be there. So basically, the union had just thrown a load of other people on there, and they were like, basically, you guys, you could just basically stand around, and for half the day, you don't really need to do anything, and the other people can kind of swap around with you, and we can kind of just like milk this project. And just to add insult to injury, all we knew is that they were being paid $1,000 each day, and that's for each person, times 200. So just have a think about that. That's $200,000 a day for people that you don't need. This is incredible. And this is a great example of why you shouldn't build huge, humongous stations underground. Not only is it underground, this new station, it's also underneath Grand Central Station. So the kind of logistics of running that site under Grand Central Station, how big it is, how to get rid of all that spoil, how to make sure that the whole excavation is structurally sound, bringing in concrete, bringing in workers, hundreds and hundreds of workers. This just doesn't need to happen. What we need ramps, we need elevators, and we need spiral ramps. And in the odd occasion, we might have underground stations, but we want them to be open pits. We want them to be dug from the top down, rather than we're actually going under an existing building and then building a station, because that is when you start racking up the costs. And we are talking big time costs. We are talking, $50,000-$60,000 per square foot. We are, it adds up so much when you're building under an existing building. And the Boring Company can do far, far better than what happened on this project. Just to finish off, any more questions, guys? Let me know, because this is the last piece we're going to discuss. Boring Company website has listed quite a few jobs, lots and lots of jobs. Some that I could be doing, especially my most recent role in the construction industry. I was working as a construction manager. Have worked as a trainee engineer or site engineer as well. But yeah, so there's some opportunities. Anyone out here with some construction experience, definitely in living in Las Vegas or Hawthorne, California, maybe consider applying for this these roles. There's quite a lot of roles. These have suddenly popped up out of nowhere. Clearly things are progressing very well in Las Vegas. I predict they'll be starting fairly soon, at least the initial excavation. Hopefully the machines are ready to go, but we'll have to see. So, I would say that is it for today, guys. Thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you learned lots. I hope that I answered your questions as best I could. Really, really happy with the Boring Company. This is a great time to be alive, isn't it, really? When you think about all the things that are going on in this world, Boring Company, Tesla, SpaceX, you know, Apple's doing amazing things, the cryptocurrency, you know, so many different things going on at the moment in the world. It's a phenomenal time to be alive, and it's just great to be able to talk about this great company, and hopefully it becomes one of those sort of revolutionary companies that changes the world, and Elon Musk gets another multi-billion-dollar company under his belt, and we can start resolving all this absolutely horrendous congestion across the world. Thank you so much for joining me today, guys. Really do appreciate your time. Oh, we've got some more questions. If they have 10 proof rocks digging 30 miles at once, that is 5 in each direction, finished in 30 days. Well, this is it, yeah. You could daisy chain the TBMs. So I think the ample sort of distance in between TBMs is around 5.5 to 6 miles. Maybe slightly less than that. I'd say around 5 miles, because that's under a year. You know, you could do the Washington DC to Baltimore project. I think that's just off the top of my head around 35 miles. So yeah, you could complete that in under a year if you had enough machines. I mean, maybe it's not viable to do it because they don't have the machines, but in the future, when they're trying to build out the network faster, why not have 8, 10, 12 machines working on each project? Then you can finish things quicker. You can get your pods into the tunnels, and then you can start earning some money. Above ground parking would be okay too, I suppose, if there was direct access to the tunnel. I was mostly thinking of keeping cars off the surface streets altogether. Yeah, it's a difficult one, Johnny, because I like building stuff underground as well, but the cost of building, these large sort of open plan structures underground is quite technically difficult. And it's also a problem because you've got to acquire that land as well, either underneath an existing building, which makes it even more complicated, or you've got to find a plot of land in a busy city, which again can be quite expensive. Thaddeus, how are you, my friend? Thank you for your Patreon donation. Really appreciate that. That's going to fund this Ecamm Live monthly or yearly subscription. Actually, it's a yearly subscription, so that's excellent. I'm interested to see Zach's take on eminent domain. I think the Boring Company has an opportunity to avoid actual property seizure through homesteading beneath the surface. Absolutely agree with that 100%. I think we need to think out of the box on this one, because previous tunnel projects have been held up by eminent domain, and I think there's got to be a better way of doing this. Absolutely. Okay, guys, I'm going to shoot off now. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate your continued support. everyone who supports this channel, everyone who puts comments in, especially everyone who supports me on Patreon. That's phenomenal. If you'd like to support me on Patreon, you can do that just from $2 a month, which is less than a price of a coffee. Please consider doing that. It helps support the channel. I'm looking to get out to the Las Vegas project, hopefully sometime next year. And every penny that goes towards this channel is spent making this channel better and supporting the growth of our community. Thank you so much. And so thanks again. And remember, guys, don't be boring. And I'll see you soon. Goodbye, all. Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye.